And welcome to PM Express. To some news developing in the last few minutes that we're hearing, and we've been confirming, and multiple sources now telling us that the majority leader, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, has tendered in his resignation. And as you know, yesterday we had an extensive on this particular show on the back of that press conference, that surprise press conference called by the First Deputy Speaker of Parliament, Joe Owusu, at which he was absolutely categorical that the party cannot impose the leader on the majority side of the House in Parliament. That rumor had been swirling. In fact, it came on the back of the National Executive Committee meeting and the National Council meetings at which this was tabled as one of the items to be discussed, the changes in the leadership on the majority side tonight. In the wake of all that controversy, in the last few minutes, we're learning that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, the majority leader, has indeed resigned. There has been a meeting today, and a very important meeting, at which the executives of the party will be meeting with the president to try and resolve this particular matter. This decision around the shake-up in the majority front was one that was being pushed quite strongly, and the executives who wanted this to happen really wanted a change. And Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, it appears from what we're hearing, says he simply now wants to step aside for that change to happen. And there's a lot to unpack there, considering the fact that this has been developing over the last 48 hours, indeed, since Monday, when it was put on the agenda for consideration at the National Executive Committee meeting and the National Council meetings. My colleague, parliamentary correspondent, Kweku Asante, is joining me right now as this begins to unfold. We are learning a bit more, Kweku, are we not? Yes. This meeting was pre-advertised. In fact, the Speaker of Parliament himself spoke about it today on the floor, that this meeting was going to happen. Yes. It's happened, and from what we are learning, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu in this meeting had told his colleagues that he no longer wants to continue as the majority leader. Yes, we understand in this meeting the conversation about a change of leadership came up, and Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu told the president in a meeting in the front of all 137 of his colleagues that he thought that it is time to make way for some fresh energy to come in. That is exactly what this source is telling me. And a member of parliament who was in this meeting telling me that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu says he's worried of some of the issues that have come up so far, the kind of rancor debate that have come up around this potential change in leadership, and that he believes that he has to step aside to make way so that these things do not degenerate into anything. And so ordinarily, this was a meeting that was expected to last a little bit long in terms of the issues that were coming up. This was a meeting that was supposed to last long, but this meeting just lasted a few minutes because the key issue that was expected to be discussed was Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu. And this is a man that was clearly now telling the president that I'm willing to go so that the party can now select someone else for this to happen. And so congratulations messages indeed have started flying in now. And so the party is expected to work on something this very evening. And then as soon as sitting starts tomorrow, they can go in there with a communication to the Speaker of Parliament to announce to the public that the majority leader, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, as we know, has resigned. And so the party has now nominated a new person to take over in his stead. It means the proposals that were expected to be discussed at the National Council and the National Executive Committee meeting this Monday will now come into fruition. We expect that the majority leader will now be Afenyo Makin. His deputy will be his chief whip, Frank Anodompreh. Habib Idrisu will rise up to become the chief whip. Then the member of parliament for Asokwa, Patricia PJ, will become the first deputy whip. And then Alex Tete will follow in as the second deputy whip. So these changes we know now has been confirmed because of the majority leader's announcement to the president in this meeting today that he has decided that he has stepped out. And Evans, in a minute just gone by, the Bawumia campaign has now just released the new picture, the statement from the Bawumia campaign signed by Miracles Dennis Abuaji, announcing the formation of the manifesto committee to be chaired by Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu. His deputy will be Kojo Oponkroma, and a number of other people. And this was some of the assignment he had been penciled down for. And that is important because, as we know, once Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu gets into that particular role, he obviously then is unable to hold on to the majority leader's position. And just before we came on air, also one individual who was part of the group that yesterday did that press conference to warn anybody who wants to impose leaders on them, and Apia Kubi says he feels pretty saddened by what has happened today with the resignation of Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu as the majority leader. And many stalwarts in Parliament were not actually at this meeting.
Yes.
And because they knew what was going to happen. In essence, this was an attempt to convince the rest of the majority to accept the changes that were going to happen. And they didn't want to hear it because they've taken a position that it was a wrong thing to do. And he was not happy that what has happened has indeed transpired. He was also been informed, that that this change has indeed happened in the
Jubilee House.
Now this is important. So just in the last few minutes, the campaign team of the vice president, who's also the flag bearer of the New Patriotic Party, have put out a statement, and this gives us an indication possibly why this decision was taken today by Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu to step aside, because it's been now confirmed that he is going to be the chairman of the manifesto committee of the Bawumia campaign. And he's going to be supported by Kojo Nkrumah, who is the vice chairman of the manifesto committee. Evron Hughes will be the secretary of the manifesto committee. So Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, as we speak tonight, is now going to coordinate the manifesto of the New Patriotic Party, and he's going to be the chairman there. I want to bring in Elton Brobe of the political desk. He's also been working his sources a bit more as we begin to learn a bit more about the decision tonight by Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu to resign. Elton, you've been working your sources all day. What more have you learnt about this meeting and the circumstances surrounding his resignation?
I think basically, our parliamentary correspondent has said it all. But what I can tell you, Evans, for sure, is that the decision to resign, from what I've taken, in fact, I've spoken to multiple sources, I've spoken to a number of MPs that attended this meeting, I've spoken to people at the presidency. The decision of the party at the start of the meeting was that there was a need to have a fresh face leading the bench in Parliament. And that, the position of the party was that the time had come for Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu to step aside and allow a new face to lead the front bench. I told you of top stories that this reshuffle in the front bench of the MPP and the criteria used was the same they used to reshuffle the ministers. It was just a matter of time that this was going to happen. And the reason it delayed was the fact that others had demanded some level of consultation. So the party went into this meeting at Jubilee House with a clear position that they were not going to move away from their earlier position that a reshuffle was going to happen, regardless of how others were going to feel about it. And so the decision was taken, and it was communicated in plain words that the party had come to a position where they needed a fresh face to lead the bench in Parliament. And for that reason, Kyei's time had come to an end. And so there was no option, or the energy was simply not there to fight again, as were made to believe by the first deputy speaker. So then, therefore, he had to resign. And once he resigned, the manifesto committee was formed right there and then. And just like you've been talking about, the statement has just come out. This decision was taken. Now, the other leg of the discussion is that in the coming days, we might see a statement that will also abolish the Ministry of Parliamentary Affairs. This is what we're thinking.
Okay, so again, that's another development there that Elton is confirming that the Ministry for Parliamentary Affairs will be abolished based on our sources confirming this to us tonight. And Elton, so we now have clarity because the central question that many began to ask on the back of the Monday's National Executive Committee meeting and the National Council meetings was how that item got onto the agenda. Especially when it wasn't even considered, but it was on it. And it was on your show that Mark Menu has suggested that it came from the Majority Caucus. Now, when you speak to members of the Majority Caucus, they are categorical that it couldn't have come from their midst. In fact, I was speaking to Andy Appiah-Kubi on Top Story, and it was clear that he's been in all the meetings of the caucus, and nobody from amongst themselves had put forth a suggestion that the leadership should change. We are learning and getting some clarity tonight that this shake-up is a proposal from the party.
Exactly, Evans. I mean, maybe some are meant to confirm on the poll that the agenda to include the reshuffle in the FP majority bench was something that was proposed by some members on the MPP side. No doubt about that. And so it was at that meeting, when they got to the agenda, that there was some pushback from some members. In fact, the name of Andia Kubi came up strongly as one of those who protested against the discussion of that particular agenda and the fact that the leadership, or better so the NEC and the council of the party, had no business deciding who leaves the side. So it was therefore no surprise that the next day the first deputy speaker held a news conference in Parliament saying that they were backing the leadership of Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu and the rest. But I mean, from what I've said and what I've been told, this matter was going to be dealt with in a manner that the ministerial reshuffle was dealt with. The only pushback was the fact that the party needed to allow the majority side to be the one pushing for that change. And my information is that even before the ministerial reshuffle came to being, there had been a series of meetings at the caucus. The caucus and the issue of changes had been discussed, and who was going where had been discussed. The only element of surprise was the fact that they were expecting Mr. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu to move to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. At the last minute, for whatever reason, it didn't happen. But what I'm thinking is that because the Foreign Minister is campaigning for the position of General Secretary of the Commonwealth Organization, if the reshuffle had affected her, it would have been difficult for her to go and convince the member states making up the Commonwealth to say that I'm contesting for this session. The question would have been, but you have been taken away from the position of foreign. How then do you come and convince us to give you that top job? So the last minute thing was done to allow her to stay on. And that put it on Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, issue in a position where it was difficult to now go back to it. And so therefore, the consideration of let's recycle what we have done. I mean, the outcome is what we are all witnessing.
Yeah, and absolutely. And Kweku, you tracked him down yesterday, I believe, when this matter came up, when Joseph Owusu did a press conference, and you wanted to ask him that question.
Yes. In fact, when I went to him, my intuition was that, listen, these are the questions swirling around Parliament. There's a certain alleged conspiracy to remove you. What do you make of it? Eventually, he looked at me like that. He started walking. I followed him. And I was asking him, what exactly does he have to say about that? In fact, as he had been on the floor of the House, his demeanor had been very, very not like the Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu we've known on the floor. He had been quiet. He had not been speaking to a lot of people. And so when I accosted him and asked him that question, he said in Chi, Omunkoso, which will translate to say, they can continue. Let's watch. There are claims that you are being schemed to be removed as majority leader. I do not have any response to that.
No comment.
There are claims that you are being schemed to be removed as majority leader. I do not have any response to that.
No comment.
I'll bring in right now Dr. Rashid Rahman with the Africa Parliamentary Center joins us on the line. Dr. Rashid Rahman, this is a developing story breaking in the last few minutes. What are your initial reactions to the news that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu has resigned?
Evans, I think we all saw this coming, and the question is, was he pushed or did he jump? And I think from the series of events and all our discussion right from Monday to this point, I think he was pushed, and I don't know whether this is the best way to encourage all of us to dedicate ourselves to public service. True, the party, has every right to decide, first of all, who represents them in an election, and then eventually who represents them in Parliament and so on and so forth. But I think we all have a stake in the governance of this country, and more so members of parliament, particularly people like the leader who has devoted so many years. I mean, the current longest serving member of parliament and so on. I don't know whether the end should be a push. So for me, I think this is a little bit disturbing for me. Those who make the argument that, manifesto committee, he needs to have time and so on. How about the others who are with him, who are ministers and members of parliament at the same time? And then on other committees, we see so many ministers, members of parliament. So really, we are just seeing a replay of maybe the situation that we saw with the NDC. And the honorable leader has joined his friend, Ray Drisu, in maybe suffering the same fate in the hands of their political parties.
Indeed, please stay with us because this is just something that is breaking. We're trying to get a bit more, and always fresh information trickles in. And as we now also beginning to learn, Elton confirmed this, that it is when he tendered his resignation that then the confirmation then came that he is going to now chair the manifesto committee. So this was tied to that, and there had been rumor for quite a while that was going to be his new position.
In fact, this was some of the committees that the party would have expected to announce at the next meeting. But because they had not been able to resolve the exit of Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, they had to put it on hold. So just 30 minutes after the news broke that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu had told the president in the full glow of his colleagues in parliament that he had decided to take the jump, he decided to resign from that role as majority leader, the party, through the communication directorate of the Bawumia 2024 campaign, quickly put out a statement that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is now expecting that the majority, the former majority leader, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, will chair the manifesto committee, and the ministers will be the sector coordinators of all this. So that statement having come out, of course, tied strongly to the idea that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu would have to make way from the majority leadership position to be able to fully dispense of this role. And
also, we are getting confirmation that it appears that Alexander Afenyo-Marking is now going to become the substantive majority leader. And already we've seen his pictures circulating already in a pose that shows that indeed he is about to assume the leadership role there. And Mr. Draman, so this is beginning now to take shape. This, you say he was pushed, but some may also look at this as a negotiated exit to make way for new faces to come in, but also for him now to occupy this chairmanship position when it comes to the crafting of the party's manifesto going forward.
Yes, indeed, Evans. I mean, negotiated or whatever kind of phrase we want to use to describe it. I think it could have been done in a much better way to avoid the rancor that we have seen. And if we say we want a fresh face, fresh legs, why his deputies and whips still at post? That's a very big question that we need to ask. I mean, when the NDC did their reshuffle, it was almost a complete sweep, and they brought fresh faces, to lead their caucus. If the argument is we need, fresh ideas and so on, so still I think there are a lot of questions, Evans, that we need to probe into in terms of, whether really all is well with this caucus.
Yeah, and you make a very important point. Considering what we saw with Joe Owusu publicly warning, and clearly he would have known what was happening in the background to trigger that particular press conference. And he didn't stand there alone. There were others behind him. And Mr. Draman, you work with the MPs. Looking at the optics of the first deputy speaker going public, with the people in the majority side who supported him. Now learning that he's now resigned, if it's a negotiated exit or, as you put it, he's been pushed. This sets the majority caucus up for some division and the legitimacy that the new crop of leaders will require may struggle. It will struggle to sort of build that consensus around them.
Yes, indeed. And you see, I mean, unlike the case of the NDC, this is, a situation where, Evans, we see daily struggles most of the time to get quorum in Parliament to make very important decisions. You don't want a situation where, as is turning out to be all the time, the minority side is always outnumbering the majority side. If you have a situation where, some of them who are unhappy about this development, particularly those that are no longer running and coming back to Parliament, and those that perhaps have been punished because of their rebellious kind of stand, I mean, in the last couple of months, as a result of which they lost their primaries. If most of them decide to stay away, we might have situations where, it might be very difficult to conduct government business, or government would end up at all times losing some of these important votes. I mean, particularly also if you add the fact that if this wasn't properly done in such a way that those who have to be led, I mean, have a say in who leads them. I mean, even if it is some kind of, consultation, discussion, and maybe agreeing to disagree, then I think, the party is in for some kind of very rough runs. And let me add, I think I made this point yesterday on this same platform. When you want to break the eight, when you want to do something that is unusual in this country, you combine that with all the challenges that this country is facing at this point in time. I think the one thing that party leaders want to do is to make sure that their unity is intact. Their unity is intact. And with all the things that we've been discussing in the last 2-3 days, Evans, I don't think unity is challenged right now.
Yeah. And my colleague who's been in the studio, please stay with us, Dr. Draman, as we make sense of what has happened tonight. You've been talking to the majority backbenchers. This has been dividing opinions already. Today you saw the body language of a lot of them, even Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu himself. What's the sense of how this may impact on the unity that they have going forward this year?
Alignment is shifting. In fact, unlike the NDC changes that happened while they were on break, that gave the party a lot of room to be able to bring the caucus together. This was happening while the House was in session. And in fact, on Monday when this news broke, the House was just preparing to take its first session of the week on Tuesday. And so on Tuesday, people began to align themselves to certain places. And so there are people who were clearly backing the deputy majority leader to take over because they believed there had to be fresh faces. And there were persons like Joseph Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu who believed that the changes were not warranted and that it didn't have to happen. But then even later in the day, the alliances began shifting because there were so many MPs who had done a news conference early on denouncing the party's plan to do that, now calling you back and saying that no, we are changing our stance. We think we want to back Alexander Afenyo-Markin now to be able to do this. There's also the argument about MPs who are exiting and MPs who are staying. If you look at the key members of parliament who did that press conference, about 90% of them are on their way out after 2025. The Subin MP, Joseph Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu himself, the Adona Kukisi, a number of them on their way out. And so there was that. And then there are those who believe that The party has about 8 months to go. There are a number of key decisions that have to come. The Electoral Commission. In fact, one of the reasons why Electoral Commission had to ditch the plan to use indelible ink was because the majority leader backed the position of the NDC on the floor.
Yes.
And so the EC was disincentivized to go into the floor to do any changes when there seemed to be near consensus on that. The last time they wanted to do something on the Ghana card, it was the same thing. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu had an agreement with the minority. It was put in a committee report recommending to the EC to drop plans to make Ghana card the sole identity document. So there are those who believe that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu had gotten to his wits' end. He had done enough, but this was time to step aside so that fresh faces will come in, because they believe, just like the NDC, that this election, part of it will be fought from Parliament. Parliament will be sitting right through till about the end of November before they will break to go and do the election campaign proper. So there are those who believe that you need fresh persons to come. And Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu himself, in the last 1 year or so, has taken quite of a backseat. So a lot of the argument on the floor is done by his deputy. There are certain times you just nudge Afenyo Makin to make the argument on behalf of the caucus. He's been paying much attention to the lawmaking process for some time now. And so the alliances are in such a way that people are looking forward to the key things that will have to come to Parliament. But they believe that if they give this job to Alexander Afenyo Makin to do, and they believe he has that mechanism to bring the caucus around the table. Some of them, speaking to him in private, their concerns were that if you don't manage the exit properly, there are persons who back Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu who will now be reluctant to
yeah, absolutely, and that is what that is what transpired with that press conference, and so going forward, you begin to see that those cracks, expect that those cracks will emerge. Just like Harun Edrusu was sitting here with me the night before he was deposed, and he didn't know that it was going to happen. He was talking about his plans for the majorities to the minority side, and then the next morning he was no longer the minority leader. And post that, there were groups that formed, groups that wanted him reinstated, and groups that also backed the Ato Forcing-led leadership. You can realistically expect that this is going to play out too, and a lot depends on how the party manages to get those who are opposed to this decision on board in this meeting that we understand is still happening as we speak right now. Joseph Wusu is not in this meeting. I can tell you that for a fact because I spoke to people close to him, and he isn't there in this meeting. And Yapia Kubu is not there in this meeting.
These are persons who are aligned or
obviously, and publicly have stated so, right? They are not in this meeting. All of them have been told about the resignation, right? So if a consensus is reached as to how to close ranks, they will not be part of that decision. So that is a very important thing to watch going forward.
Joseph Osei, because he normally presides over the House in the absence of the Speaker. And he sort of gives the majority a lot of leeway to be able to do the things. In fact, look at E-Levy, how it was passed. It was Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu that presided over the House. The first deputy speaker, Joseph Osei, who did that. And so if you do not bring him on board, what is going to be his posture when he is presiding over the House, when the Speaker of Parliament isn't there and you are taking key decisions? Is he going to be toughen up to the majority side? These are key questions that the party has to answer.
Indeed, and I know senior executives of the party in the MPP were very livid at the press conference that Joseph Wusu called yesterday. They were absolutely livid. In fact, one of them, a senior leader of the party, told me he actually had planned to also go public and take him on, and he's been told to calm down. That's how bad it was in terms of how close it came to tensions completely flaring to the point where it would have gone completely out of control. Now, that tells you that going into tomorrow in Parliament in session, there's serious business still to be done. This will play out. Tensions will build. And the individuals you needed in this meeting to come around the table, and how do you get them to, even if they convince the rest who are in this meeting, how do you get the rest of them who aren't there to appreciate the spirit in which that consensus was built around Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu's exit? Yes, he's exited, but you made the point about his own plans going forward. I have been interviewing him quite a bit in the last few months. I spoke to him towards the tail end of last year, and he was still very upbeat about the future in terms of his leadership of the majority side and what he wanted to do as the Minister for Parliamentary Affairs. Now we are learning from Elting that
will be no more.
Will now be scrapped. He was clear in his mind that the path to a stronger democracy was through this Constitutional Review Committee that he's put together, and he was upbeat about all the proposals they put forward that he wanted to implement, including clipping the powers of the president, to reshuffle. In fact, that was one of the things that struck me when I had that conversation, so that the president cannot make that decision that every single change must come to Parliament, and Parliament must have the final say. And the president cannot simply move people around and say that they should not be vetted, which is a position that the minority side has already been canvassing. And he wanted to make that something that goes into the constitution as part of the review. And then I asked him about, and these rumors started not this week. It's been there for months. After the time I was talking to him sometime in October, the rumors were very rife. And I put that question to him that, we've heard that they want to remove him as majority leader. And because I was asking him that question, because it was coming not too apart from when the NDC had done their shake-up. And his answer was cryptic, quoting to me a proverb, in essence to say he's had it, but he would pretend for now that he hasn't had it. Clearly, yesterday when you put that question to him, he had the same posture. They should go on. And Dr. Draman is right that he did not make this decision on his own volition. He was clearly pushed to do this. If you listen to his own answer to me, the cryptic, response he gave, his own answer to you, this is something that obviously he was forced into doing. And if you're just joining us, as you see on your screens right now, the majority leader, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, has resigned as majority leader. It comes on the back of a controversy over the shake-up among the majority leadership in Parliament. We're having a conversation tonight with Dr. Rashid Draman, who knew him very well. Dr. Draman, we need to at some point start talking about his legacy. But before I even do that, already you've been talking a lot when we learned that about 18 very experienced members of Parliament on the majority side decided voluntarily that they were not going to contest again, which means they were exiting. And then on the back of the primary recently, even more lost their primaries. If you put all that together, you are inching close to 30 very experienced majority members who will not be returning to Parliament. Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu obviously was not going to come anyway, and he's obviously that has been deposed as a majority leader. Between now and December, where you will need him the most, remember that government business must still be done. What do you reckon will be the impact on government business in the House?
Evans, given the fact that already we were expecting to see more and more a House that is going to look half empty, with members of Parliament, those who are running, busy trying to secure their future. With what is happening, we might see your parliamentary correspondent already, indicated that, for some time now, he is not the Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu that we know on the floor of the House. And perhaps we are going to see more of that. And for me, I think the impact on government business, on parliamentary business, on our democracy is going to be huge. Because this is one person, apart from being the longest serving member of Parliament currently, I think he's also one of the members of Parliament that I have worked with over the years, who is very, very diligent. He will read anything that you give to him. He will scrutinize everything. Every meeting that you go to have with him, he has a constitution, he has his standing orders. That is not the case with many MPs in the House. You speak to some members, particularly at the committee level, and when scrutiny is taking place, particularly when it comes to bills and so on, a lot of members of Parliament are not interested in this. And Honorable Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu is one who is very, very interested in deepening our democracy, who is very, very interested in seeing a very strong Parliament. Look, over the years, Evans, me and him, we've traveled across to many countries. And at one time, we went to, I think, Kenya or Uganda. And in those countries, in their parliaments, they have some of the oversight committees chaired by the opposition. And at that time, they were in opposition, the MPP. And he kept saying to me, I think that this is something that we need to do for our parliament, for our country. When, they assumed power, he and I had some conversations about this. And I could see that I think he still believed in that. He had an interest to push that agenda. But of course, he's only one person. And so, really, the business of the House and our democracy is going to witness some dent in the next 9 months that is left of this parliament because of these developments. And then you add to that, Evans, you have the likes of the first deputy speaker, who also very experienced, very principled.
Yeah.
If they all decide to take a back seat, and in addition, make the business of the House maybe run in such a way that maybe there's some of the sympathies that they used to get when he's in the chair, they don't get it anymore. We are going to see a very interesting end to this dramatic hung parliament.
And we are beginning to get some pictures from this meeting, that this very important meeting at which Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu resigned and was appointed as the chair of the Manifesto Committee. And as we're learning, Alex Nyafanyo-Marke himself was also there. My colleague Elton is joining me with a bit more of this. And Elton, and these pictures that we're seeing, and you're working your sources very hard on this, it looks like this was a very harmonious exit, and that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu has come to terms with this already. Hello, Elton. Hello, Elton. Okay, we'll try and get Elton. Elton, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Evan.
Yes, I'm looking at the pictures you're beginning to see, and you are exclusively managing to get your sources in there to tell you a bit more. It appears to me, from what I'm seeing and from all the reports you're getting now from within this meeting, that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu appears to have come to terms already.
Of course, Evans. And I can say for sure, that the pictures came directly from the new majority leader, Alexander, and he wants to make the point that there is cordiality. There was actually cordiality before the meeting came to that decision, and that there is no issue. The majority leadership are all happy with the development and the role played by the president and leading members of the MPP, and that they have been tasked to work together to ensure that they present a united front in Parliament. That's exactly what he tells me that they will be doing from now till the expiration of the life of this current Parliament of Ghana, and that there is no animosity. All of them pledged before the president and members of the MPP that they will work together. According to him, it was not a competition. The party came to a decision that they needed to present a fresh face. And so when the idea was thrown at Mr. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, he accepted it. And that's how come they all left the meeting smiling, took pictures, and tomorrow the new regime will start, but it will start with the understanding that all of them will work together. I asked him whether he will now be moving to Mr. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu's office because he's now a majority leader. He tells me that's early days yet, and he might want to stay in his office for now. Now there's going to be a reconfiguration of the sitting arrangement in Parliament. What you are likely to see is Mr. Osei Kyei-Mensah take a seat as in one of the seats designated for former leaders of the House. You are likely to see somebody like Nichi will maybe move from where he originally sits and then to another place. These are the things that have happened behind the scene, and these are things we're likely to see going tomorrow. And so he says it's ready. He has served Parliament. He served Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu. It's time for them to give him the needed support so that he can carry the aspirations and philosophy and then of the MPP on the floor of Parliament.
These are the pictures we are talking about, exclusive from the meeting that just ended there. There you see there, and Dr. Oh, goodness me. In fact, I can now say, I'm delighted to say I've just been joined by Alexander Fenyo-Marking, who is just joining us right now here on PM Express. Hello, Alexander Fenyo-Marking. Thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. Okay, we'll get him back. As you see, look at the pictures there. And this is literally coming from that meeting that just ended. That is Alexander Fenyo-Marking in a handshake with the now resigned majority leader. It looks very cordial indeed, as you see there. The incoming majority leader and the recently resigned majority leader, indeed, in a pretty hearty exchange, as you see on your screens. It appears this indeed is a pretty cordial one. This is a pretty strong handshake there, and we are hoping that we can get to talk to the new majority leader, who has now, we understand, been confirmed. The pictures say 1,000 words. Well, look at that handshake there. It tells 1,000 words, does it not? Dr. Dramani, look at that. Do you see this as genuine? Is this genuine? You work with both of them. You look at that handshake very closely. What do you read into this?
Well, I mean, Evans, I don't know whether it's a smile to the cameras or it's genuine. I mean, I don't know. I mean, all I can say is that, my very good friend has been pushed, and that would not be a very good end. And also, maybe just to add, I mean, if I hear your parliamentary correspondent, I hear him clearly say things like, I mean, on a number of occasions, the leader sided with the minority, maybe to the maybe disappointment of his party. Is it why he's being punished? I mean, I think that's a question that we need to interrogate. And for me, watching our parliament and working with them, I have always said, if you look at the compass of a legislator, I mean, vertically, they have to deal with the constitution and the interests, I mean, of the citizenry. Horizontally, they have to deal with party interests and the interests of, self-interest and so on. We always advocate that at all times when they decide, when they work, I think they should always look vertical. And I mean, these instances that were cited by your parliamentary correspondent, the use of the Ghana card, the indelible ink, and so on, I believe these were things that had the potential to plunge this country into some difficulty. And a statesman like Honorable Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu on these occasions, sided with the interests of this country. So are these some of the reasons why he was pushed? I don't know, but I think these are questions that we need to ask. I mean, be it as it may, Evans, at the end of the day, I think the party should learn that, dialogue, consensus, involvement, and inclusion of everybody in decision-making should not be taken for granted, because we sign up for this democracy, and that's a list that, our politicians can do to all of us, including members of parliament.
And if you're just joining us, we still beginning to learn a bit more and unpack what has happened in the last hour, the resignation of Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu. And the pictures you see on your screens right now are pictures that we're exclusively receiving now from that meeting at which Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu resigned. He resigned and immediately was confirmed as the chairman of Dr. Bawumia's manifesto committee. And the man replacing him is his current deputy, Alexander Fenyo-Marking, who you see there. And this is just when all of them had just exited that all-important meeting at the Jubilee House. And a number of the majority members were in this meeting on the back of the confusion that erupted yesterday when Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament, had addressed that press conference warning external agents who want to impose on them a new leadership to back off. Well, as we now know, if there was ever an external agent, that agent prevailed because that change has happened. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, as you see in that shot, and that handshake there is one that you can read 1,000 meanings into. As you see there, the Alexander Afenyo-Markin shaking the hands of Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu right after he's learned that he was going to become the majority leader. Not that he didn't know before, because we all knew that he had been penciled as a replacement for him if he exited, except for the friction that had erupted. This would have been something that would have happened long ago. It's happened now. Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu has exited, and as we've been reporting from everything else that has happened over the last Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, in fact, I was supposed to interview him last week, but he, obviously from everything that was happening, he knew. In fact, there was a point that I said to him or somebody close to him that it's very possible by the time that we actually sit down to talk, you may not be the majority leader. It turns out that yes, indeed, he isn't a majority leader as of tonight. And those pictures are exclusive from that meeting that happened a short while ago. It's been a marathon one indeed. And the meeting was called because of the friction that emerged yesterday. A friction that emerged with a very public opposition to an attempt to change the leadership. And the president and the party's leadership thought they should close ranks, come together, and find a way to effect the changes without too much rancor. In that meeting, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu tendered his resignation. And Alexander Afenyo-Markin was confirmed as his replacement, and which is what you see there on your screens playing out. But there's a lot more that you don't see in the pictures.
And Evans, in fact, Alexander Afenyo-Markin has his work cut out for him because of the new standing orders. They have to reconstitute all committees. And in fact, the only thing they did today was the appointments committee because of the vetting that has to be done with the ministerial name.
So that has been constituted already.
So Afenyo-Markin now has to decide on all the other committees, all standing and other committees. As leader, he has to get to work immediately with his team. And we expect that in the coming hours, as soon as this evening, the information we just got from an MP who was in that meeting is that the party expects to put out a message that this is something that they've been able to confirm, and this is what is going to happen. And tomorrow, the Speaker of Parliament will have the cause, will have the chance to read that letter from the New Patriotic Party confirming that Afenyo-Markin will now be the majority leader. In fact, one other person says that all the things we've said about a leadership change, it wasn't really a leadership change. It was Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu change. Because nobody in the current leadership is going to be changed. They are just going to get promotions. Apart from Lydia Al-Hassan, who had been appointed as a minister, who was clearly going out, all of them are going to stay. Alexander Afenyo-Markin is going to move one step. The chief whip, Frank Anodompe, who has also not been in parliament for the last 2 days. Since all this rancor has been happening, he has been missing in action. When you call him, he says, let them deal with it. He will come back later. He's been in Sawam all along. We expect that tomorrow, with this now,
he becomes the deputy
majority leader will come in. Habib Idrisu will now assume the role as chief whip. Alex Tete will come in as the second deputy, and then the MP for Asokwa will also come in. So clearly, the duties have to be done now. When we got Alexander Afenyo-Markin, he was expecting to speak, but then I said he has to run away immediately because he has to do a few things now. And we understand he is probably going to be in a meeting with Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu alone this evening to try and clear out a few issues that have come up, so that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu is clear in his head that as his boss, he had clearly backed him on this. And Evans, one particular thing that we also have to look is where that's what Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu said. It became such a big issue when Haruna Idrisu was changed. They offered him Collins Zada's seat. He said he wouldn't take it. Collins Zada wouldn't even give it to him. It became such a big issue.
I remember that. In fact, it was visible on the floor. Very public disagreements about where he sits and where he doesn't sit.
The unfortunate thing on the majority side, however, is that those two other seats that are in front, that are not behind anybody, are occupied by the first and second deputy speakers. And the speakers cannot sit behind any person. They have to sit in front. So clearly, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu now losing that black seat, and it should be stated that since 2000, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu has been in leadership permanently as whip, deputy majority leader, and leader. He has seen it all throughout. So he has been in front seat for 24 years, and in the final year, he now has to take a back seat. And so clearly he would have to sit behind the leadership because the first and second deputy speakers cannot make their way by the architecture.
And we need to end very briefly in a second or in a minute or two, just to get a sense from Dr. Draman. Dr. Draman, very, very briefly, What do you reckon is Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu's biggest legacy now that he exits?
Evans, I think his biggest legacy is, we need to unpack it, but I think he has deepened our democracy. He is, first of all, somebody who understands our parliament and the parliamentary procedure more than almost any other person in the House currently. He is someone who is fiercely independent-minded, just like the first deputy speaker. And so for me, I think that the fierce independence of mind is one of, his key legacies in terms of, what he has contributed to the deepening of our democracy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rashid Ramani. Thank you very much for sharing tonight with us on the day when we learned the shocking news that Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu has indeed resigned. We knew this was going to happen, but of course, nobody thought it was going to happen in this particular manner, where he tendered in resignation. We thought from everything we heard that it was going to be shelved at some point, because if you listen to all the players involved, they said there was no plan to make any change, and that this was actually mooted by the people from the majority side. Now it's been confirmed. Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu indeed is no longer the majority leader. And you see there the shots coming in from the Jubilee House shortly after that was confirmed. Do you want to stay with us? Because as we go into tomorrow, this is something that we're going to be all over for you. Alexander Marking will definitely give us his thoughts on this. He actually nearly joined us of a conversation, but for everything that's happening in his life right now, he becomes a very, very sought after person, and he had to move very quickly onto some other very busy things that he has to deal with tonight, because it's a statement that we're expecting now to formalize and confirm all that. And yes, thank you for joining us. Alexander Marking is a new majority leader, and PM Express is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. Alumobiters experience greatness in every moment. The Ghana AIDS Commission, a Pepsodent, every smile matters. And no matter your water needs, Syntex Tank has it all. Syntex Tank is first to introduce a double-layer tank, and now you can have it in bespoke form. Just call them. All that, any size, color, they will provide. You have 7 years warranty as well. 0244-335-168, or shop online at syntexgh.com. And you're strong and you're tough. Now, you also want to get Pepsodent because it has the Pepsodent Cavity Fighter. It's fortified with pro-fluoride and microcalcium ingredients, sealing tiny and invisible holes in your teeth. This prevents cavities, keeps your teeth strong and mouth healthy. Pepsodent Cavity comes in all manner of shapes and sizes, 175G, for example, all the way down to 12G. So you can always get what you can afford at any time. Pepsodent, every smile matters. Enjoy the rest of your evening on the day when Parliament was left divided because the Speaker declared that the parties must have a say. In fact, they must take a lead in reshuffles as far as the leadership is concerned. And then tonight, Osei Kyei-Mensah-Bonsu, the majority leader, resigned.